I am very excited to be here with Laura Day. You are such a special person, Laura Day. You have written how many books now?
This is my seventh.
And many of them have been bestsellers. This
And a
one
few
are
of them were sellers,
few. Hey, you got to write them all though.
right? No risk, no reward, no lotus, right?
Amen to that. You have your new book out, The Prism, which I just read and absolutely loved. And I also watched your interview that you did with Oprah on this new book, The Prism. And Demi Moore was a guest on that interview. And I'm so blown away by your story because I feel like you really let us in to your story on this book, as well as like it's 7 steps to heal your past and transform your future. Like you literally are giving people a tool book on how to identify the roadblocks in your life and how to transform them. And you help people understand their tragedies too, because you come from such a traumatic upbringing. But do you feel like that is what has caused you to have all your gifts?
Well, no, I mean, I think if you survive, I also have, a mother and two siblings who suicided. I think if you survive, you use what you have. And, I was lucky enough to be given the prism intuitively really early in life, which is why I wanted to put it down for everyone else. No, ideally, you have a wonderful childhood and incredible role models and your ego forms in a way that you easily create what you want in your life and bounce back from frustrations. But for most, or I won't say most, let me have some wishful thinking here. For many people, that is not the case. And it is, I think we're taught to feel like something's wrong with us, and it's really not. We just don't have, if you don't have the user's manual, it's very hard to use the tool.
So I kind of just want to talk a little bit about your upbringing because when I heard you talking about on Oprah, I was blown away. And then I was reading it in the book and I was like, oh my gosh, this is in the book. You share this, like you go so deep with this, which I am so grateful that you are so vulnerable with your story. But you grew up in with two very extreme parent personality types.
Sure, we can really just call them what they were, very, very disturbed. Some people should not have children. Um,
So your parents, like when it felt kind of like your dad sort of like swooped your mom away and kind of married her quickly. Like she
Well, actually, so the way the prism is structured is you take your original structure and now that you're an adult, you can restructure yourself with simple changes. And we are working right now on what we call the first ego center. What's your foundation story? Mine was my mother was bipolar 1. During a manic episode, my father eloped with her and got her pregnant within the first couple weeks. So I, first 3 months, had a bath of in utero Thorazine. And then, one thing led to another. I mean, it's not that he was a doctor. It's not that she couldn't have had an abortion. And she said she seriously considered it. But she didn't. And I was there to trap my mother. That is my origin story. I was there to anchor my mother in a marriage that she did during a manic phase.
wow. So she really never was aware, like consciously wanting to get married or have a kid. It just sort of happened to her.
No, she didn't want to have. My mother was a borderline and a manic depressive, and she did not want to. I think she had no intentions of doing either. But mania is psychosis. My father was a doctor, took advantage of it. Married her right away. And, I mean, my origin story is she said, she thought about aborting me, but that when she held me in her arms, she was so glad she didn't. And, kind of even that is such an odd thing. I mean, no, I didn't want you, but you were so fabulous that I had to keep you. but the message is also keep being fabulous. And it's funny that you say how vulnerable I was to write the story. And on Oprah, I have to say that when you write something, and some of my books are written books, some of them are what I call channeled books. Two of them are channeled books, which means they really came through me without necessarily being a part of me. One is the circle, which I still practice in my own life, and then the prism, which I also practice in my own life. Um, and when Oprah, I don't know if you can see this on camera, but when she brought up my history, which was the first interview where that happened, I was like, did I really write that? Like, I was like, oh, wow, I'm not sure I really want to talk about this.
Yeah, because you have a very long relationship with Oprah because you immediately somehow you met up with Demi Moore right away.
33 years ago or 32 years ago. That was Demi. I didn't have a TV, so I didn't know what Oprah was. And she swooped in and said, you've got to come with me to Chicago. You've got to do this. And I'm like, there is no way in hell I'm getting on a plane. And she is, yes, you are. And anyone who knows to me, that is one bossy girl. And so she literally put me on a plane, promised me I'd be back by the time my son got home from school. I wasn't. And took me to Oprah, had my makeup done on the plane and took me to Oprah. And that was really, and Oprah and Demi made that Practical Intuition, my first book, a bestseller. Um, it was really a coming home to be back on Oprah and to have Demi did not tell me she was coming on until the night before. And I'm so glad she told me because I hate surprises, even good ones. But she did, she just kind of popped on and then she and Oprah got very spiritual. I'm much more pragmatic. I'm much more, life is hard enough without like the bells and whistles and the green juices and the mantras. I personally am very much on the side of do something tiny different. Please don't add something to my already overfull plate. Please don't make me feel any more incompetent than I already feel doing everything every day. You walk out, you get a run in your tights, you think, oh my God, really me? That it's life is full of stuff, and I think it's wonderful to take time if you can to delve deep into all of the mysteries, but especially the prism is about this is not another thing you have to practice 20 minutes a day. You know, this is something where you make a small change and the world meets you, not a change inside yourself, because I feel like it is again kind of annihilating to say use your broken tool to fix your broken system. Uh, we are, and this is not very popular, but we are mechanical beings, magnificent ones. I mean, if you look at the human circulatory system, you think, wow, whoever created this is genius. But we are systems within a system, that has rules within a solar system, within a bigger system and a bigger system, which means that one domino down changes everything because we're interrelated. So why make it so overwhelming? And I think I got really tired of seeing because I answer all my own emails because people just say such personal things. I got really tired of people saying, well, I'm doing this and I'm paying for this and I'm practicing this but I'm clearly not doing it well enough. I'm like, no, a system is supposed to work for you. It's not about you're doing better. That it was really disempowering to people, all of these complicated, convoluted practices. And then the response when they didn't work was, well, you didn't believe enough. I mean, if
Mm.
you need to believe, then belief works, but the tool doesn't. So this was really my response. And it came very powerfully, after I saw a lot of losses in my environment.
So I kind of want to go back to the beginning of your origin story because, like you said, that's in the prism. That's this first. How do you first step, right? Is identifying your origin story.
Well, no, in the
So,
prison, I will go back to my origin story.
Hmm.
Not my favorite topic, but I will go back there. But like in meditations, when people go back to a play time in your childhood, I'm like, there is no way I'm going back there. But the prism is not about going back. The prism is about being right here, right now, knowing what your three goals are and doing something different and allowing yourself to encounter the achieving what you want as a way to changing yourself instead of continually beating yourself up. But my origin story was I was born to a violent, abusive, narcissistic doctor who got a manic depressive borderline woman pregnant, and then got her pregnant every year. And so at 5, I had 3 younger siblings. We lived in a separate apartment from our
That,
parents
that's what I cannot wrap my head around.
without an adult. So my baby sister of blessed memory was probably like stabbed with those ducky pins. This is before disposable diapers, where you had those little safety ducky pins where you'd put a cloth diaper on and then put rubber pants on. And I would get on a step stool and put her on the changing table. And, I was 5 years old. We had to go out into a public hallway and ring the doorbell or bang, because we weren't tall enough at 5 to ring to get into our parents' apartment. And,
With
you
a
know,
baby though, how did I just like I have only one daughter and I remember how petrified I was taking care of her that like I was gonna do something wrong because they're so fragile when they're little. Like the baby
yeah,
was just
what
in.
I learned is that babies are pretty indestructible. Babies are not easy, they're not that easy to kill. I
So,
mean,
but like sleeping and like you were in charge of like the naps and the
no,
bedtime
no,
and
no, 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 no. Mostly it was at night that we were alone. There were days also that we were alone, but mostly it was, from 8 at night to 8 in the morning or 7 at night to 7 in the morning. So I did know how to heat up a bottle or change a diaper or, I didn't change a sheet. I would just put a child back in a wet bed. But it was chaotic, and I think it wasn't identified as chaotic because my parents were affluent. I mean, my father was a doctor at New York Hospital Cornell. My mother came from, she was graduated from Sarah Lawrence. Her mother graduated from Vassar. I mean, things like this. I actually went quite a few times to the Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Children when I was probably about 12 and 13. And it was on my way home from school. It was at the bus stop on 7th Avenue and 14th Street. Oh, I'm sorry, 7th Avenue and 23rd Street. And I would tell them, and they would, I don't know if they ever did anything. If they did, my father certainly never mentioned it, and we were never taken out of the situation. But people just didn't interfere, especially in those days, in, well-off white families.
yeah, just like hear no evil, see no evil, just like brushed under the rug, pretend like it's not happening.
I mean, now if there was a file like that in a organization, I think there'd be some real trouble, but not back then. And
So
we're
you
talking about the 60s.
you started telepathically communicating with your mother though. Is that when you started realizing you had these gifts?
No, because as a child, and I think everybody listening can identify with the fact that as a child, the things you think are weird are not weird. I don't know, like the fact that your ears stick out. But the things that really are weird, you think are completely normal because they're parts of your daily life. So telepathy and kind of having a sense of what was going to happen and being able to view someplace that I'd never been. I didn't have any awareness that other people didn't experience that. And also, when you are in a home that is dysfunctional, I think that even though you're not even aware it is dysfunctional, this is just your home and your family, there's a certain degree of secrecy
Mm.
that is just ingrained in you. It's not even that you keep a secret, it's that you'd never even think to express it. And there's one point, I think I put it in the book, I never remember what I put in, where my mother, my grandmother had slept, my parents had separated. My grandmother, I was the only child home, the other kids were at camp, and my grandmother had slept in the apartment with me, and neither of us had keys to the adult, the grown-ups apartment is what we called it. And she was in for a week or two, I guess, trying to support my mother. And I knew my mother was dying. I knew she'd taken an overdose, and I'd been banging on the wall trying to get her attention, but I didn't have a key. And so I picked up the phone to dial the police, to dial 911, which was not the first time I'd done that. And she said, "Don't do that. The neighbors will know." And, I didn't even realize I knew this. But I looked at her, I said, "Grandma, the neighbors know." I mean, the police had been called multiple times, but it wasn't conscious in me that this was something different and the neighbors knew. Um, and again, in this day and age, especially in the socioeconomic group I grew up in, maybe somebody would have reported, I mean, sometimes we get locked out of the apartment and we'd be sitting outside the door in a public hallway in our panties and t-shirt. I mean, someone might have reported it, but back then people didn't.
You said that your intuition is what saved your life. And you kind of, I feel like, is that what you're wanting people to understand about themselves is that they have this same power to tap into their intuition?
Not only do they have, yes, but not just intuition. People have so many things to save their lives. A connection to one another. I mean, whenever I don't take a moment to go that extra mile for somebody when I can easily do it, I think, oh, wait, I might be the only one doing this because so many people went the extra mile for me, whether they were teachers or neighbors or a policeman in the area. It really, yes, intuition saved me. Your intellect can save you, your community, your connections, your sunny personality, so many different things, but we all do have something. What the prism is if your structure, if your ego was formed in a way that you don't have receptors for wealth or for love or for ease or for health or for happiness, here's how a healthy part would have formed. But you don't even have to read that. All you have to do is go to the chapter that has what you're missing in it
Right.
and do one small thing. I mean, on some level, I wrote this book. I'm 66 years old. And I wrote this book very comprehensively in a way that it's the first time I've written such a comprehensive book because I thought, you know what? Teachers can use this, therapists can use this, intuitive teachers, healing teachers, medical students. And I really wanted to put in all of the information, really make it a textbook. However, if the reader who just wants to fix their external life, this isn't about fixing you. You don't need fixing. It's about fixing your world. Your new opportunities will fix you. You fall in love. I was not ready for love when I fell in love, even though it was one of my goals. But my husband showed up, my now husband showed up and said, "Listen, I'm not going to stalk you, but I'm not going to go away." And he was as good as his word. He wasn't my type. He had no deep-seated rage. He was employed. He got along with his family. He had no character disorder. He was completely boring to me. But that one of my goals was to be in relationship and in a good relationship. And he didn't disappear. And one day, because he was so constantly wonderful and there and coming up against me and, kind of challenging my fallacies and adoring me, and he's also really hot, which helped. Um, One day I was like, oh, wow, like this is the most amazing part of, my reality, other than my son, who's always the most amazing part. It took me, I would say it took me a year and a half to 2 years of having exactly what I wanted, to accept, to have a receptor that could accept a relationship that wasn't full of drama and trauma.
And do you take that back to the prism? You worked these steps in the prism to get to that place where you could actually accept a healthy relationship?
I actually take it back to the circle, which is the precursor to the prism. So,
They kind of go together.
yes, the circle is the broad brush. The prism has really the detailed things. Because what I realized was that with the circle, where you have a goal and it takes you through elements, was that people really wanted to know what we're taught to intellectualize. They wanted to know what they were doing. And they wanted very specific instructions, not deal with outer roadblocks in your life, but say yes to everything safe for 3 days. Like they wanted very specific prescriptions. And I serve my students. I mean, that is my goal, is to serve my students, serve the people, my readers, serve humanity in some way, because I have been also so wonderfully served myself by others. Just by you're having me on the show again for this new book. I mean, um, so that, I totally lost my train of thought. I'm not even going to fake it.
We're
ADD.
oh, same with me. We're talking about though how the circle and the prism go together and how you have worked these steps continuously, and that is how you're able to accept a healthy relationship when there was no trauma or drama in it.
Not accept. I didn't accept. I attracted first. It came. So
It
I
was a
got,
match. So you were a match for it because you attracted it.
well, I don't know. At the time, I wasn't a match. My poor, poor husband, my poor, long-suffering husband. But it made me, what the prism is. People say, how is this different from all of the other self-help? Most self-help says, look deeply in yourself, look deeply at your history, do healing, make profound changes. Mine says wear a different color shirt and go out somewhere. Like very simple. And what happens is, so my prism change was that I just stopped, even though I really wanted to feel loved and wanted. I'd been in a really bad situation. I did not date anyone who asked me out or anyone I met who I liked. I asked two people. I thought the one place my intuition is being completely overrun by my patterns is my choice of men, not my choice of friends. I have amazing friends, but my choice of partners. I actually have my best male friend is over 30 years, was a great choice too. But once it got family romantic, I would choose my parents. So I asked my two dearest friends who had long marriages to good men to pick me people to date, all of whom were just smotheringly boring. As much and but they weren't. They were amazing, intelligent, warm, normal, successful people. I just had no receptors open to that. But ultimately, I put one foot in front of the other and I stuck to the discipline that I had chosen, which is really, also what the prism is. Your patterns, what resonates with you is part of your sick part. You want something new, you've got to do something new, not think something new. You got to do something new because think can trick you. So that was the new thing I did. And ultimately, my students call him, it's been 14 years. I swore I'd never get married. I've been married for 11. My students call him Delicious Stephen. And, because of trauma, when I wake up in the morning, every morning I wake up, make sure he's still breathing. And then I thank just whatever, I thank my own prism. I thank the people around me. I thank, you know, intuition. I'm so grateful that I have this in my life.
So you say intuition comes in the same portal that other things come in. Is it memories and thoughts? Like there's like it comes in so it can be confused. Your intuition can get
Right.
confused.
So your intuition comes through the same five senses. Everyone's waiting for like a unicorn with a sign on it. it comes in through the same five senses. You get all the other information, but it also includes the gestalt of those senses, which are memories, which are thoughts. But the problem with, and I can't read myself very well. I mean, every once in a while, I'll get hit over the head with something, but most of the time, I'm as subjective as anyone. I fear my fears, I hope my wishes, depending on my blood sugar level. I'm either predicting through my fears or predicting through my wishes. But luckily, I have something called boot camp where I train intuitives because I really only take four clients at a time. So I train intuitives. And so thankfully, they are removed from me. They have perspective enough and they're ballsy enough to just tell it to me straight, predict for me straight, experience when I'm kidding myself. And some of it's real unpleasant, I got to tell you. If you walk out of a reading feeling like you're doing everything right and yet not everything is going right in your life, it's probably not a very good reading.
So do you do readings often for people? Does
I,
it come to you easily or is it hard for you to get a reading for
oh,
someone?
no. That is my only state. Um, I'm not really great at a dinner party because I just don't even remember the culture or the politics. But if you want to talk about, your life, your past, your future, and you want me to look for you, that I can do. But I don't take, I work, my day job is I work for four large companies predicting the future. Um, I also teach and I love to teach. I love to lecture. And when I teach and lecture, I tend to also read, but not in a formal reading sense. It's just if people are reading, I read their readings for accuracy. So I reread. I mean,
Okay.
I do that on Instagram Lives. I'll see a reading that just doesn't quite make sense. I'll say, you might want to redo that. Or especially my students, because I train intuitives for both business. I train therapists in intuition. I train physicians in intuition because an intuitive shouldn't be your therapist. Your therapist is trained to be your therapist. Shouldn't be your doctor, shouldn't be your investment counselor. But you certainly want these people to have intuitive skills because it gives them an edge to be able to address your needs. And of course, the real magic, if you will, of intuition is intuition's ability to accurately predict the future. And again, you can't do that for yourself. I mean, if you are worried you're going to die in a fiery crash and you've had that worry for years, I guarantee that is not how you're going to go. That's your neurosis. Intuition is accurate, actionable, and immediate.
Okay, so how do you know when it's your intuition speaking and not like a memory or a thought or one of the other? You don't?
What you do is you integrate intuition in your normal functioning by having goals. You document the intuitions that come to you that other people have for you. So what do I mean by intuitions? They could be thoughts, they could be neuroses, but those out of the blue, very detailed. Intuition isn't you need love, wear more blue. Intuition is, hmm, an initial B, a cow rancher, shrimp table, big love, and means nothing until you're at the party 3 days later at the shrimp table. You think, oh, how nice, they have a shrimp table. And some rancher named Bobby comes up to you and you look at him twice because you have documented. Because remember, memory, your mind's a messy place and memory is inaccurate, but part of the intuitive training is learning to document. Now, in the Prism, how we use intuition and it is really by first of all, picking an action that doesn't resonate with us. If it resonates, it's an old deal. A safe action, doing it repetitively, but then noticing what's new. And again, documenting it. And what you'll find is before you even understand the prediction, you've already created what will happen. Because the real danger with prediction, and the thing I'm very, very hard on my students about, is a good prediction if it doesn't predict something someone wants, should be followed by predictions that can be verified over the passage of time with how to change it. if
You
someone says
can change. So you're trying to say no prediction is ever set in stone. If you get a prediction that you don't like, you can change it.
most of the time, I mean, there are definite things. If someone predicts, I mean, I want to find something not awful. Because, people use intuition to scare themselves, and they should be using it to make their lives more what they want, to make things easier, to make better choices so they get into less trouble, so they waste less energy cleaning up messes that they habitually create over and over, which is why I wrote the Prism. You will create the same mess in different ways, in different situations. And one small change keeps you from doing that. But if someone predicts that if someone predicts something that's already there, that you will, oh, see, I don't want to do something that scares people, because people are just looking to be scared.
I know.
You think hypervigilance makes you safe. It doesn't. Hypervigilance narrows your field. Mindfulness makes you safe. In mindfulness, when you're addressing what's going on, you are taking into consideration the future, even if you're not doing it consciously. You are reframing the past so that it serves you. Because, by the way, your past, your memory is very inaccurate, subjective. So much easier to accurately predict someone's future than to accurately get agreement on what happened in their past.
That
Because
is so true.
yeah, past is subjective. And if, back when I had living siblings, if you were to ask us all about the same day, we would all have a completely different memory and think the other was wrong.
And you mentioned this in your book, y'all all went about it a different way of dealing with your past. Like you all internalized it differently and had different response mechanisms to surviving it. And you turned into intuition and like channeling it. It sounds like from your book, whereas some of your other siblings weren't able to turn it into a positive thing.
Well, I mean, abuse is never positive,
Right, right, right.
but we do, having a trauma at 15 is different than having a trauma at 4, because in the
Totally.
age of 7, you don't have an I. When you say I, there is no I really. You're building that I, and by around age 6 or 7, that I is built, and then it's all revision. So, it really, when you're traumatized early in life, it really does kind of limit what you can build. And what was very fortunate for me were many things. And I do cover this in the book, because I have 2 siblings who've suicided and one who doesn't function. Or, I would say doesn't function. And having a brain that wasn't structured for memory, that's for sure. I mean, I could literally walk into a wall. One of the most scary things in school was when I had to change classes, was I never remembered where the next class was. So if I couldn't find, because ADD also makes you disorganized, if I couldn't find the chart that says you're in room 204, I had no idea, even after an entire school year, where I was going. But it did allow me to get instant ability, like a prosthetic exoskeleton, kind of an instant thing about this is how, to allow myself to function, those machines that allow people with paralysis to move. That's what intuition did for me. So it didn't become a part of me. It didn't heal me, but it came through me and protected me.
And showed you the way, right?
Well, it took over the way, absolutely. And it was just enormously protective. And it really became conscious when I realized that this was something that was given to me that maybe wasn't given to my sister or my brother or my other sister or my mother or the many other family members who have committed suicide, that this was something that was a fluke of my ability to use the mechanics of having a structure that works without actually having that structure myself. And I use this, I mean, I always have a copy with me. I use this, and I really like the book, not the audio, not the digital, the book.
I
And I
love a
like
book too. I love to hold it and to be able to flip back.
it's also helpful because the way you look at it, it gives you it really gives you some choices in a way that if it's removed, it doesn't. Because we are trauma, not, not having an ego is not being powerfully in yourself enough to create in your life. Being in a damaged self and creating damaged realities. Either you create great things that lack foundations, or you can't create things at all because you have a paucity of resources that you were exposed to. There's so many different ways that damage in those first years affect us, but you don't have to understand it. And by the way, you understand it by looking at what's not working in your life. So, I didn't have to I didn't understand that I was put in the position of protecting my mother and always having to be in battle in the world until I noticed that I was always in battle in the world. And I thought, oh, well, the antidote to this is to stop my natural tendency to defend every creature on the planet
Mm.
and just not get into battles.
So that was an awareness that you realized. Okay, so when you go through this book,
Third ego center.
when you go through it, like what do you just like flip to like the first ego center? Like how do you use this book on a daily basis? Because I read the whole book and I went through all the ego centers and it's like it's kind of like the chakras is what I just don't want to get any of these
It,
things wrong when
it
I'm saying.
follows the chakras, but it's not the chakras.
Okay, it's the same areas in your body.
And has a lot in common. Like right now, as a group, we're working on our first ego center, which is really our foundation.
Right.
It's great to use the colors of the first ego center, red,
Yeah.
use the tones, use the foods that fortify. But it is different because it really is more about how you take that one energy we share and refract it out into the world to create your reality. Again, we're all living in a different reality, even though we also share it. So there are many ways to use it. A quickie way is just from the top of your head to the base of your spine. Notice where you're in discomfort.
Mm.
And that usually identifies, especially in the moment, what's not working for you. So I notice my second ego center, which is nourishment, creativity, abundance. And
Okay.
just remembered that I haven't eaten today and it's 2:30 in New York City. So,
Okay. So you're
you know, that,
hungry.
that may not be a deep thing, but it's something that I need to attend to because I am a human machine. But another way is, when you wake up, and often, especially people who have had challenges, they wake up and there's something, often it's the same feeling when you that really is impeding them. When you locate it and you go to that ego center and you practice either one of the simple questions or one of the simple assertions, like really you do it, not think it, not understand it, just do it. What you find is the functioning part clicks into place. Also, when you're in an argument, noticing which ego center is lit up, gets your attention on the person you're arguing with. Notice which ego center is lit up for you. Then you know what is there, what is it that is hurt in them that you need to address? What is it
Oh,
in you, and how can you do that?
that is such a good guide and a good
There's
tip.
so many ways to use it because our bodies are maps. Another way is when you think of a goal, like for example, when you think of, being alone and wanting a partner, like so that's your goal. You know, where is it in your body when you again let your attention move down? Where do you feel it? It's not always your heart. Sometimes it's your fifth ego center, which is about having a voice, being in conversation, and then being able to lead a situation. And those three levels are: you were born with a right to have a voice. Once that was modeled for you and affirmed for you, very early on, you learn to be in conversation. You see a baby before they can even speak. babble and get a response and then back and forth. And from that conversation, because conversation is both heard and given, you form the ability to lead, to walk and have people follow, and also to find those teachers in your life. So if when you wake up or when you're in a party and you're noticing, well, I'm the only one who doesn't have someone, if you notice where that is, you know what it's about. And again,
Mm.
something simple, and that simple thing might be go and start up a conversation with someone you never would have spoken to.
So you are like getting back to it, you are about an action step. Instead
Action.
of just dwelling on the past and all of the traumas of the past, like I do think there's a time and a place to address all that and to look into it, but you're just saying, let's just start where we are. Let's identify where this is in our body and then identify what root, like what the ego center it's affecting, and then make a decision based on that information that you know about that ego center to move forward.
And the other way is to notice the problem. Oh, wait, you don't have enough clients, you're not making enough money. Well, does it make you panic, or does it make you just not feel good about yourself? Panic is first ego center, which is a very wealth, money, safety ego center. But value is fourth ego center. So you notice what ego center
Mm.
issue is. So if the issue is, I want a raise, I want a job that pays me for doing something I like. If that's the issue, then you go to the fourth ego center and you do something simple. And it doesn't even have to address the immediate problem. When you address that ego center, you address it everywhere. Because believe me, if you're not being paid in your job adequately, you are not being valued in your relationship adequately, you are not being valued in your social group adequately, you are a system within a system. It doesn't take, you may just identify it in your job, but it is everywhere. Good news is when you fix it in one place, you fix
Fix
it.
it in all places. Because what do they say? How you do one thing is how you do all things. And it's kind of like this. How you feel in one area is probably how you feel in all areas. That makes so it's all part.
You act even more than how you feel, because I also agree there is a place for feeling, there's a place for remembering, there's a place for all of that, but you do all of that in much greater safety when you've solved the problem first.
Hmm.
And you can solve the problem first. And then, in order to keep it solved, all of the rest comes up, but you're dealing with it. Then, the way to deal with something is when you're through it.
Hmm.
And research shows that reliving trauma re-traumatizes.
I
You know,
agree with that. I think I also I have had actual success from like going through the past and kind of rewiring it and letting it go. But then it's like if you just circulate on it over and over and over again, I agree with you. I don't think it does any good. Do you think it does good to do a little bit of reflection on it? Because you kind of have to identify it.
you don't have to identify it.
You don't
I mean,
think so?
so I will bet that when you reflected on the past and worked through it and blah, 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 the real step that made a difference was you're letting it go.
Totally.
And you can let something go by understanding it and et cetera, et cetera. I think that's ineffective. I think the effective way is saying, you know what? This is not helping me get what I want right now. Let me do this one thing different. So let me let it go by just like not even giving it attention. And then the understanding comes. But the idea that you can understand your fishbowl from inside your fishbowl, I think is a misconception. Does that mean I think that behavioral therapies are far more effective than analysis. And that's just my opinion. I can be wrong, but I think there is a time for analysis. The time for analysis, though, is when you've done something differently, you've gotten a different result, and now you want to understand it, and you can because the dynamic has changed. So you have a little perspective, and now you can understand it in a way that you don't do it again.
So what do you do for like the first ego center? It's like survival, and you give a lot of prompts. It's like when you're an infant, your demands were met and your structures were in place to assure you safety and health. Like you give like positive prompts and then negative prompts. Like,
Well,
you
those are more kind of, this is what would be healthy, this what isn't healthy. But the real important ones at the first ego center are the questions, the assertions and the questions. Because what you do is you pick the question or the assertion that you don't resonate with. Because if you resonate with it, it's going to keep old you in place.
okay, so that you don't resonate with.
Right. So, for example, I know this sounds a little pathetic, but today or yesterday I picked, since we just started, I am irreplaceable. And I realized I really don't believe that. And which is funny because I definitely do feel like I'm made special in my life, but I think, nah, actually I'm really replaceable. I thought, wow, I have to live this. And so what I did was I started noticing, starting yesterday, all the ways that I am irreplaceable
Mm.
uh, in my environment, to my friends, to my clients. Um, and it also made me a little kinder in my interactions with them, because in realizing that I'm irreplaceable, I also realized that there's a certain amount of dependence that I need to be a little more conscious and kind about, show up for a little more. So you pick one, and I'll probably do that for one more day. And then at the first ego center, I'll pick something else. And now we also work because each ego center has a build. So together, and the reason we do it together is when you do something in a group, it is exponentially more powerful. So it's not that people aren't working with whatever ego center they need to work on to get their whatever their goals are, but they're also working as a group on this foundation. So the what we decided as a group, or what I decided for the group that we would work on, was order. So the place of joy at the first ego center is order. And that doesn't sound very yummy, but when everything's in order, you don't have to think about it. I mean, think
Right.
about like, your clothes in order, your social life in order, your finances in order, your house is in order, your bath products are in order, your shoes are in order. It's like,
You feel
wow.
safe.
But also everything's easy.
Yes.
Everything is there. Like, then all you have to do is learn more things and build and play and use your power, which is the gift of the first ego center. Use be in your power and keep growing all the opportunities it attracts. But order is necessary for that, because otherwise you're reinventing the wheel over and over again. I mean, if in school I had not lost the card that showed me where all my classes were, my days wouldn't have been filled with terror between every class, trying to figure out where I was supposed to go. So, that is really, so we do that on Instagram. We do it as a group.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, we do. I go on, in the morning, I put on lipstick and go on Instagram with my coffee. And morning, my husband's a TV and screenwriter, so, and I also work all over the world. So morning, wherever I am, because he's an insomniac, so I always have a few free hours in the morning. Not always morning for everybody, but each ego center also has a very organic intuitive ability and a very organic ability as a human being, an ego ability. Presence is the ego ability at the first ego center, because your foundation is your presence. It literally is in a home where you anchor something to the earth, where you build that structural support from which everything else can grow. And of course, the intuitive gift is often the opposite of the physical gift. And so if, for example, you don't like your home, one thing you want to do is rein in that intuition. And the intuitive gift at the first ego center is remote viewing, which is having your attention in a location that's not physically present for you, or astral projection where you really are physically present at that location. But when you're somewhere else, your power isn't here. And here is where, this point in space time is where you can make change. We don't love it because it means we have to get off our butts and do it. But the here and now is where you can create change. And one of the things I will say in almost 50 years of teaching people from all walks of life, I mean, people go on my website, they see the celebrities, they see the companies, they see the glam. But, I've taught in shelters, I've taught in crisis areas, I've taught in schools with bullying problem. I mean, one of the things that I absolutely know, because I don't use believe. Believe means there are no facts behind it that you can rely on. One thing I have seen is it doesn't matter where you are right now. It really doesn't. There are some people who are huge names who have disasters and disastrous lives. What matters is what you do with it. And a miracle takes a moment. And it can be this moment, but you can't magicalize. A miracle starts with saying, wow, this sucks right now. This is where I am right now. I'm not financially secure. I don't have a partner. I don't think I look very good and blah, blah, blah. Just like, and then verifying your data and then doing something with it. And the first ego center, the base of your spine, your foundation, one of the things it does with autonomy, you hopefully you had that feeling of welcome and safety. If not, you have to give it to yourself as an adult. But then the next step in autonomy is competence, because the ability to get the tools, we all have that. And, there is no man or woman who is an island. We need each other. And I realized, I have a situation right now that I've been waiting for a professional to finish. They're not doing it. I realized I'm not competent in this area. This professional is not exercising his competency. I made a call and said, gee, I think I'm going to need you to start taking this over to a friend of mine. Do you have someone who can help? He said, sure, absolutely, no problem you know? Um, so being competent is also connecting with the resources, the teachers, the learning, the help that we need to succeed. It's not, we don't blossom into everything. Some believe that happens when we're dead, that we become one with everything. But
Hmm.
right now, you're an individual in an interconnected world, and it is there for you. And if you don't know it's there for you, this is the work for you because it's important to know that.
What is your hope with this book? When people read this and they read through all the 7 steps, what is your hope that they will walk away with?
I don't even think they need to read through the 7 steps. I hope they go to whatever area of their life needs fixing, they fix it, and they're taken out of pain and into their own power. I think there are a lot of modalities that help us tolerate more pain.
Mm,
I find it very suspect. I don't want to exercise or meditate or medicate my pain away. I mean, I want to do that too until I've done something else. But you know, being able to manage pain kind of skips over the important thing, which is why don't we just fix it? And it is fixable. It's one of my big inspirations was a young girl named Brooke Ellison, who died recently at the age of 40 something. And I met her when she was, I forget if it was 9 or 11, first day of middle school. She had been hit by a car crossing a highway and went from being a dancer and a student and all these things to being a quadriplegic on a respirator, couldn't move anything, including her lungs. She could only speak through a special device because you need your breath to speak. And there was a power bank because if the power went out, the respirator stopped. This young girl graduated from Harvard, got a PhD from Stony Brook, was a professor, wrote two books, what had an amazing, amazing, amazing life. We have to find the can do in our lives and was surrounded by love, and
That's
I'm
so
sure
true.
I'm sure that doesn't mean that she didn't look at her nieces and nephews and maybe wish that she could have had nieces and nephews. But I'll bet you that those parents wish that they had a PhD in public service. I mean, there's always going to be something. We are always work in progress. And I know when this is working and when my three goals are coming together, when I completely forget about them and start obsessing about something else that's wrong.
Gosh, Laura, this is like such a wealth of knowledge. And like Deepak Chopra is in the front, like giving you praise for it. Like you are with the great minds of our generation sharing your wisdom. It is so incredible to get to peek inside of your mind. When you meet people, do you see them as can you see their whole, do you see them as a person or do you see everything about them right away? Like when you meet me, can you see my whole existence?
No, absolutely not. I mean, I usually don't see things about people unless I'm just like bored and distracted, and then I go into their lives, or they ask me a question, and then my intuition is trained because I didn't come to intuition through spirituality. I came through it by being tested. So in the early 80s. When someone gives me a target, then I get a wealth of information and I report it because I don't remember it.
Mm.
But I certainly don't. I would say on a certain level, I'm less, even though I am always intuitive. I always laugh at people who need to get into their intuitive state. They need their crystal and their breathing and their hands a certain way and quiet and their special chair. And like, that's not how intuition works. Soldiers are great intuitives. ER doctors and nurses are our great intuitives, especially the nurses. People who are doing triage, those are our intuitives, not the Zen monks. And my intuition is functioning all the time. But if I noticed all the information, I would be psychotic and not psychic. So it only gets caught in the net if it's something that I need to share or something that I need to know.
Interesting.
Science book. You don't have to open the cover and understand it and do it. There's a chart. You can look at what it is that the problem is or that the goal is. Go to that chapter and do one simple suggestion and then have it proven to you by the changes in your life. You
I
know,
love that. I love that you're saying that we don't have to just like go into the weeds of our whole existence and like figure it all out and do all the grieving, which I mean, all of that, like I said, I have done all of that stuff and it has been, I'm not upset that I've done that work, but I love that you are saying we can just start now and let's fix the issue instead of having to just dwell on the past over and over and over again. And there's quick results if you follow these steps.
and I mean, I love therapy. And what's really interesting for me about therapy is the importance of witness. Going to a place where all the stuff that's confused inside of you,
Hmm.
you speak outside of you. And
Totally.
there's someone there to connect with it, to witness it. Same thing I really love about writing. I mean, originally, I think as a writing, it was a way of nourishing myself because it was witness. It came out of me, and I could look at this and say, oh, wait, even though maybe no one in third grade wants to be friends with this person, I want to be friends with this person. This is an interesting person. I mean, I remember when I had my first composition book just for my own use and a number two pencil and a pencil sharpener, and when I could make words. And what an amazing gift that outlet was. Finding your creative outlet, which is second ego center, which is nourishment, creativity, and abundance. Finding that creative outlet, whether it's cooking or joining anyone who's singing on the street or, whatever it is, but that way, that vehicle for expression is such a wonderful thing. So I'm certainly not against analyzing. I'm not against therapy. I'm not against feeling, but I find that often people use it as a way not to move forward. And getting exactly what you want often solves the internal conflict. I mean, I am, excuse me, I guess I wish I had had a different childhood. It was so long ago, you know, but I wouldn't want a different adulthood.
Mm.
And they're little vestiges of it that I continue to work with. So I do wake up every morning and my first response is terror because that was my response all through my childhood. And my second response is realizing I'm not there anymore.
Wow.
Sure. Do I wish I just woke up in calm? That would probably be nice. But I also don't want to be other than I am now. And when I do want to be other, I use the prism, I use the circle, and I change it.
I love that. That is amazing. Thank you so much for sharing all this with me. I always wrap up with one question, which is leave your light, and it's what do you want people to know? Just drop some inspiration.
You are irreplaceable. And really, I know this makes me look and sound like a psychic and a healer, but for a moment, really take the hand of the person who got you at imperfectly as they may have where you are right now, because there is a lot going on in you and the world, but you got you here. And if you can honor that bond between you and you and really be a good friend to you, which doesn't mean, you don't make amends for things and you don't work on the bumps. We've all got them. But if you can really just be a good friend to you, you've got it down.
I love that so much. Thank you so much for joining me. Thank you for writing this book, The Prism. And I just can't recommend everyone enough to go get it and just check in on yourself and see where you are and do a little audit. And this is such a great, just easy to understand book. You make it so easy to read. And it's like you said, you can refer back to it all the time. You're still referring back to it and you wrote the book. And it's amazing. So thank you so much for your time, Laura. I appreciate it. Where can everyone find you?
Laura Day Intuit on Instagram. There's no schedule. I just pop on whenever I can. I often post it in stories. LauraDay.com. Please sign up for the newsletter because I do a lot of town halls, free events, reading exchanges, boot camp, which is my training. I also post interviews where you can really, sometimes I learn more about my work from an interview than I do from just being me.
Yeah.
Um, that they're very enlightening for me. So those are those, and whenever I come to a city, I try to do a free workshop either at a Soho house or a bookstore. So if you want me to come to your city, please. And I always do a class. I don't do a reading. You can read the book. I don't need to read it to you. I do a class. I do a mini workshop. I get you all reading, all doing healing, all making changes, all working in community. So I love to do that because it is really about connecting with one another.
I love that so much. Thank you so much for joining me, Laura. You're amazing. And is this book, what is it out or when is it coming out?
Yes. This is out. I really recommend you get the hard copy. I know everyone's audio and digital. Get the hard copy.
Mm-hmm.
It's out. You can find it anywhere. I so appreciate when you write reviews, and I am on my website. I'm the only one who looks at your questions, so make them short. I always answer them. So if you don't get an answer, I mean, this is my life's work. So I'm interested in what it's doing for you. But if you don't get an answer, it means my computer ate your email. And we'll go offline and you can ask me your question.
I love it so much. Thank you so much, Laura Day. You're amazing. Bye.